The voice on the other end of the line is ragged, panicked. Words tumble out between sharp, shallow breaths. She's not breathing. There's a choked pause. A sharp inhale. There's blood everywhere. I didn't mean to. The dispatcher's voice is steady, professional. Sir, I need you to stay calm. Who is not breathing? But the caller is unraveling, his breaths turning to gasps. God, she's... The line crackles. The dispatcher's voice grows firmer. Sir, listen to me. We're sending emergency responders. Stay on the line. But then, the line goes dead. The quiet wealth of the neighborhood is shattered by the wail of approaching sirens. Red and blue lights slice through the dark, flashing against the pristine white stone of the Caldwell estate. Neighbors, once comfortable in their security, now linger behind drawn curtains, eyes wide with morbid curiosity. The first officer on scene pushes open the wrought iron gate, stepping into the manicured lawn. Something is wrong. The call was vague, but instinct tells him this is more than a domestic dispute. A second officer follows, hand already hovering over his holster. They've seen enough crime scenes to know this one is different. Inside, the air is thick, heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the lingering scent of sweat and expensive perfume. Serena Caldwell lies motionless on the polished wooden floor. Her body is contorted, as if she had tried to reach for something, or someone. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, are fixed in an expression of fear, mouth slightly open as if her final breath had been stolen mid-scream. A dark crimson pool fans out beneath her head, seeping into the grooves of the floor. The officer exhales sharply. Jesus Christ! This wasn't an accident. This was something else. Standing over Serena's lifeless form, Graham Caldwell barely moves. His hands, streaked with blood, tremble at his sides. His shirt, expensive, tailored, is darkened with smears of red. His wristwatch is shattered, its glass face fractured. A detail so small, yet it speaks volumes. His breathing is erratic, shallow. His eyes, once sharp, always calculating, are vacant. One of the officers steps forward cautiously. Sir, step away from the body. Graham doesn't respond. He barely seems to hear. Does he feel remorse, panic, or something far darker? More officers flood into the gym, weapons drawn. Step back. Hands where we can see them. Graham blinks as if suddenly pulled from a fog. He lifts his blood-stained hand slowly, a dazed obedience in his movements. The lead detective, a man with years of reading criminals in their weakest moments, watches closely. There is something off about Graham. He isn't pleading, he isn't protesting, he isn't even afraid. There is only an eerie stillness, as if something inside him has already fractured beyond repair. His voice, when it comes, is barely more than a whisper. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The words hang in the air, thick with implication. The detective's gaze sharpens. What wasn't supposed to happen? Graham swallows hard. His jaw tenses, the muscles twitching as though he's trying to suppress something. A confession? A lie? The officer steps forward. Graham, we need to know what happened here. Graham exhales shakily, but says nothing more. The silence is deafening. Then a new realization takes hold. One body, one suspect. But something is missing. The detective scans the room. The tension in his chest tightens. Something is wrong. A name forms on his lips, cold and sharp as a blade. Where's Kieran? The officers exchange glances. The scene is incomplete. There should be another body, another suspect. But Kieran Tate is nowhere to be found. And suddenly, this isn't just a crime scene. It's a mystery. A betrayal buried beneath layers of secrets. And Graham Caldwell is the only one who knows the truth. To the outside world, Graham and Serena Caldwell had it all, a life most envied, a marriage admired, a sprawling estate, lavish vacations, high-profile careers, a couple that turned heads at every social event. But behind the grand facade, something was missing. Their home, once filled with laughter and affection, now felt sterile, hollow. Conversations were brief, distant pleasantries exchanged like strangers in a crowded room. The connection they once shared had frayed into something brittle, easily broken. Graham felt it, and Serena pretended not to notice. Serena had always been relentless, focused. She built her empire from the ground up, turning her boutique business into a multi-million-dollar brand. She worked late nights, juggled high-profile meetings, traveled across the country. There was always another project, another investor, another deadline. She told herself she was doing it for the family, for Lena's future. But deep down, she knew. Graham resented it. "You're never home," he had said once, an edge to his voice. "And you think I enjoy that?" she had snapped back, exhausted. "I'm doing this for us." But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Graham had once beamed with pride at Serena's ambition. Now he felt like a forgotten afterthought. At 41, he was still a successful investment banker, still a man of means. But Serena had outpaced him, outshined him. She was celebrated. He was tolerated. Each client dinner she attended alone, each celebratory toast that didn't include him, chipped away at him. One night, he scrolled through Serena's latest interview. A journalist had asked, "Who's been your biggest supporter through it all?" Serena had smiled, graceful and polished. "My team. My friends. My clients who believed in me." Graham's name was never mentioned. That was the moment he realized. He wasn't part of her world anymore. When Serena first hired Kieran Tate, Graham barely noticed. A 28-year-old former Marine. Rugged, disciplined, exuding quiet confidence. A fitness trainer hired to keep her in peak shape. But then Graham started noticing things. The way Serena looked at Kieran, interested, engaged. The effortless way she laughed with him. He watched as Kieran offered her a towel after workouts, his hand brushing hers. It was nothing, until it wasn't. Lena was only 10, but she wasn't naive. She heard the silence at dinner. She saw the way Mom's eyes lit up at her phone but dimmed when she looked at Dad. One night, she sat across from her father at the table, watching him push his food around. "Are you mad at Mom?" she asked quietly. Graham looked up, startled. "What?" She shrugged. "You don't talk to her anymore." He forced a smile. "Of course I do." But Lena wasn't convinced, and Graham knew he was losing his family. Eleanor Caldwell had never liked Serena. "She's selfish," she would say. "Too busy playing businesswoman to be a wife." She had warned Graham, told him that a woman like that would never stay devoted. "You should have married someone who puts you first." As Serena's career grew, so did Eleanor's influence over Graham. "She'll replace you," Eleanor whispered one evening over dinner. "Men like you don't fit into women like her's future." And Graham, though he didn't say it, had already begun to believe it. Graham watched Serena transform under Kieran's guidance. She laughed more freely. She looked at her phone with anticipation. One night she came home wearing a new gym outfit. Sleek, form-fitting. Graham noticed. He leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Since when do you care this much about working out?" Serena rolled her eyes. "Since I realized I should take care of myself." "Or since Kieran convinced you." Her head snapped up. "Excuse me?" Graham's jaw tightened. "You think I don't see it?" Serena's face darkened. "There is nothing to see, Graham." But Graham knew that was a lie. One evening, Serena walked in, flushed, radiant, still energized from her session. Graham sat on the couch, watching. She was different. "What's with the glow?" he asked. Serena laughed, brushing her hair back. "Just a good workout." Something about the way she said it made his stomach turn. "Anything interesting happen?" She hesitated for half a second before smiling. "Just something Kieran said." That was it. The moment it all shifted. Graham wasn't the man making her smile anymore, and that realization broke something inside him. Graham didn't confront her, didn't yell, didn't demand answers. Instead, he watched, tracked her schedules, her moods, her smiles. He became hyper-aware of every lingering glance, every text she left unanswered in his presence. The anger didn't come all at once. It smoldered, grew, burned slow. He wasn't a fool. Serena may not have crossed the line yet, but she would, and when she did, he'd be ready. Graham Caldwell had never been a jealous man, at least that's what he told himself. But something about the way Serena moved around Kieran was different. She was lighter, almost effortless in his presence. The tension she carried at home, the sharp sighs of exhaustion, the clipped responses, none of it existed around Kieran. Graham started attending her training sessions under the guise of support. He sat on a bench, pretending to check emails while his eyes never left them. Serena would laugh at something Kieran said, an easy, unguarded laugh Graham hadn't heard in years. Each session felt like a private world he wasn't invited into. And then the paranoia set in. It started with small things. Kieran would place a hand on Serena's lower back, guiding her posture. She didn't pull away. He noticed when she was tired, when she was stressed. He asked about her work, her dreams, and Serena answered with more excitement than she ever did with Graham. Graham used to be that man, the one who saw her, who cared. Now, he was just an outsider in his own marriage. Graham started noticing patterns. Serena laughed a little too hard at Kieran's jokes. She lingered at the gym, stayed back for just a few more minutes. At home, she would mention a funny story but conveniently forget to say who told it. But whenever Kieran's name came up, she lit up in a way she never did with Graham. That's when Graham started keeping notes. Suspicion turned into obsession. Graham hired a private investigator, told himself it was necessary. He installed spyware on Serena's phone. Every text, every location, every call was now his to see. She wasn't hiding anything, yet. But then the investigator sent him a report. Serena and Kieran. A gym session that ended an hour ago. Yet, she was still there. A call from her to Kieran, late at night. A meeting at a cafe. No gym bags, no workout, just them. Graham stared at the photos. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was hunting. Graham refused to be the man left behind. He needed control. He needed balance. So he made a move of his own. Her name was Tessa. Younger, beautiful, unattached. She was easy. No complications, no expectations. He wasn't doing it for love or even lust. It was about power. Serena may have been drifting emotionally, but Graham? He was the one stepping out first. And that, to him, meant he was still in control. It started as another argument. "Are you even here anymore?" Graham snapped. Serena folded her arms. "I could ask you the same thing," he scoffed. "You're always too busy. Too busy for Lena. Too busy for me." Serena's expression hardened. "You're so bitter, Graham. Do you even know how exhausting it is to come home to you like this?" Something in him snapped. Maybe if you weren't too busy screwing your personal trainer, you wouldn't feel so exhausted. Silence. Serena's nostrils flared, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she grabbed her purse and walked toward the door. She didn't chase after him. She didn't even call his name. Instead, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. Kieran. One moment of weakness, one night of reckless passion. And Serena finally crossed the line. The private investigator slid the envelope across the table. Graham opened it, hands steady. Inside were photos. Serena stepping into Kieran's apartment. A lingering embrace at the door. Each image was a nail in the coffin of their marriage. Graham clenched his jaw, feeling something darker than anger rise in his chest. Not rage, not heartbreak. Something colder. He traced his fingers over the final photo, Serena smiling as she walked out the next morning. She didn't look guilty. She looked happy. Graham didn't confront her. He didn't rage or accuse. Instead, he pretended nothing had changed. Serena continued coming home late. She still carried the same secret glow, and Graham let her believe he was oblivious. He cooked dinner. He asked about her day, all while his mind carefully constructed the perfect revenge. Because Serena thought she had won. She had no idea he had already set the pieces in motion. Graham didn't just want a confrontation. He didn't want a screaming match or an apology. He wanted justice. But, in his mind, justice wasn't about divorce papers or breaking down in front of a therapist. No. Justice meant making them both pay in a way they'd never forget. Serena had lit the match. Now Graham would burn everything down. Graham Caldwell's voice was even, calculated. "Let's have a drink, man. No hard feelings." Kieran hesitated, but Graham's smile was friendly, almost too friendly. "Really?" Kieran asked, unsure. "I mean, after everything," Graham cut him off. "I need closure, and I think you do too." A pause, then a nod. Kieran never saw the storm brewing beneath Graham's calm exterior. He had no idea he was walking into his own execution. The amber liquid swirled in the crystal glass. Graham's hand was steady as he poured, unbothered. Kieran took it without hesitation. "To new beginnings," Graham said. Kieran chuckled. "Yeah, something like that." He took a sip, then another. Graham leaned back, watching, waiting. Minutes passed, then Kieran rubbed his temples, his jaw clenched. His breaths turned shallow. The poison had started its work. Kieran gripped the couch, knuckles white. His vision blurred, stomach twisting violently. "Damn, I don't feel right." Graham leaned in, voice calm but laced with something darker. "You really shouldn't." Kieran's eyes widened. Realization dawned too late. He tried to stand, but his legs betrayed him. Graham exhaled, shaking his head. "You should have stayed away from her." The front door opened. Serena's heels clicked against the floor as she stepped inside. "Graham! Kieran!" Then she saw them. Kieran, slumped, struggling. Graham, standing over him, composed. Her eyes widened with horror. "What the hell is going on?" Her voice cracked with panic. Kieran tried to speak, but the words never formed. Graham's expression hardened. She wasn't supposed to be here, not yet. Serena rushed to Kieran, hands shaking. "Wake up! Stay with me!" She turned to Graham, voice shrill with desperation. "What did you do?" Graham didn't answer. He wasn't looking at Kieran, he was looking at her. Serena saw it in his eyes. This wasn't about Kieran anymore. This was about her. Years of resentment, humiliation, betrayal, they all erupted. Serena saw it coming, but too late. Graham's hands gripped her shoulders, fingers digging into her skin. "You broke us," he whispered. "You chose him." "Graham, let go," she choked out, but his grip tightened. Then he shoved, hard. The thud of her body hitting metal echoed through the room. Her head struck the weight machine, a sharp crack. Graham stepped back, heart hammering. Serena's body went still. For the first time, true silence filled the house. And for the first time, Graham felt something colder than rage. He stared at the wreckage. Serena, motionless. A lifeless stillness. Kieran, unconscious, barely breathing. His hands shook, but his mind was eerily calm. One move, one mistake. And now, everything was over. Graham picked up the phone, dialed 911. The line connected. His voice was steady, practiced, dripping with false panic. "Please, you have to help me." And just like that, the lie became his truth. Graham sat on the edge of the couch, his shirt still damp from sweat, his hands now clean but trembling. He kept his eyes wide, glassy, like a man teetering on the edge of grief. When the lead detective stepped closer, voice firm, Graham let his shoulders sag, as though the weight of the world had settled onto them. He lost it," Graham stammered. His voice wavered, just enough to sound convincing. "Kieran, he came after Serena. I tried to stop him, but she fell. And then he just—" A pause. Graham swallowed, forced himself to look broken. "I didn't have a choice." The detective studied him. "Why would he attack your wife?" Graham let his face twist with pain. "Because she was ending it. He couldn't handle it." The detective exchanged a glance with another officer, a carefully constructed lie, and Graham almost believed it himself. Kieran lay motionless in a hospital bed, tubes and machines keeping him tethered to life. The coma had silenced him. The police, lacking a clear account from the only other witness, had little to work with beyond Graham's word. "Without his testimony, we have nothing but the husband's version of events," one officer muttered, flipping through notes. "Doesn't sit right," the detective responded. But without Kieran talking, we can't disprove it. And so, Graham's lie held. For now. The news of Serena Caldwell's tragic passing spread like wildfire. Friends, clients, business associates, all left in stunned grief. "She had everything," murmured one former colleague. Social media flooded with tributes, condolences, questions. But Graham? Graham played the part of the devastated widower flawlessly. Dark sunglasses hid his dry, exhausted eyes as he accepted people's murmured sympathies. His hand rested protectively on his daughter's shoulder at the memorial, a picture-perfect portrait of loss. And still, whispers circulated. Some didn't believe him. Eleanor Caldwell had never liked Serena, and now she had the perfect opportunity to rewrite history. She sat down with reporters, old friends, anyone who would listen. "My son loved her," she said, voice trembling, eyes brimming with crocodile tears, "and she made a fool of him." She painted Serena as a manipulator, an unfaithful wife who had humiliated Graham. "She drove him to this," Eleanor whispered. "No man should have to go through that." The narrative shifted. Graham was no longer a suspect. He was a man betrayed. Just when Graham began to believe he'd won, the unthinkable happened. Kieran opened his eyes, weak, disoriented, but alive. Graham's stomach twisted when he got the news. "How much does he remember?" he asked Eleanor, his voice carefully controlled. "We don't know," she said, gripping his wrist tightly. "But if he does—" Graham inhaled sharply. Kieran was the last loose thread, and if he talked, everything unraveled. The detective leaned over the forensics report, eyes narrowing. "The impact angle is wrong." His partner frowned. "What do you mean?" "She didn't just fall," the detective said, tapping the autopsy notes. "She was pushed." The air between them grew heavier. "If she was pushed, that means Graham lied." Everything shifted. The case wasn't just a tragic accident anymore. It was murder. The courtroom was silent when Kieran took the stand. He was pale, still recovering, but his voice didn't waver. "He called me over," Kieran said, "told me we should clear the air." His hands clenched into fists. "Then I started feeling sick. He poisoned me." Graham's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Then came the forensic reports. The surveillance footage of Graham buying a bottle of whiskey, one laced with a fatal dose of sedatives. Piece by piece, the story unraveled, and Graham couldn't control it anymore. Graham sat in the defendant's chair, expression impassive. The jury's decision was swift. "Guilty." The judge's voice carried through the tense courtroom. "You didn't act in self-defense," he said, eyes locking onto Graham. "You acted in rage." The gavel came down, and Graham Caldwell's once perfect life ended with a single word. Kieran disappeared from the public eye, haunted by the weight of Serena's death. Eleanor refused to accept reality. "My son isn't a murderer," she insisted, bitterness tainting every word. And Lena Caldwell? She grew up with whispers. Her mother, a victim. Her father, a killer. A childhood overshadowed by a crime she would never fully understand. And the house where it all happened? It stood empty, a monument to jealousy, betrayal, and the deadly cost of obsession. The headlines were relentless. Deadly love triangle ends in tragedy. Billionaire wife, jealous husband, and the trainer who knew too much. Betrayal, murder, and the price of obsession. Television anchors dissected every detail, their voices dripping with manufactured concern. Was Graham Caldwell a heartbroken man pushed beyond reason, or was this a premeditated crime fueled by possessiveness and control? Tabloids painted Serena as the cheating wife, Kieran as the reckless lover, and Graham as the scorned man who snapped. But was it ever really about love? The media crafted a story people wanted to believe. A sordid affair, a jealous rage, a deadly confrontation. The truth? It was never that simple. Prison had erased Graham Caldwell. The name, once synonymous with power and wealth, now belonged to a convicted murderer. He used to command respect with a glance. Now he was just another inmate in an orange jumpsuit. His company gone. His wealth? Depleted by legal fees. He had once shaped the world around him, bent it to his will. Now he had no control. During his sentencing, the judge's words had echoed through the silent courtroom. You didn't kill out of love, you killed out of entitlement. The final blow had not been the prison bars. It was knowing his daughter would never look at him the same way again. Lena Caldwell, now 12, understood loss in a way no child should. She had stopped asking about her father. She had stopped talking about her mother, because in the world's eyes, Serena had been the unfaithful wife, and Graham, the murderer. So where did that leave her? She had been too young to stop it, too young to understand the tension at the dinner table, the way her mother's laugh had stopped reaching her father. She only knew one thing. She had lost everything. It had never been about passion, never about love. It had been about power, about Graham's slow realization that he was no longer the center of Serena's world. He couldn't accept that she had outgrown him, that Kieran had become the man Graham no longer was. So he had convinced himself that if he couldn't have her, she didn't deserve to exist without him. But Serena? She had never been the villain of the story, and Kieran, he had never been her savior. They had simply been caught in the crosshairs of a man who couldn't stand to be irrelevant. Betrayal had been the match, but obsession, unchecked rage, and entitlement were what burned it all down. Graham had justified every step, every invasion of privacy, every slow, methodical turn toward revenge. In his mind, he was reclaiming control, but in the end, no one won. Not Graham, not Serena, not Kieran. Because when control becomes more important than love, all that remains is destruction. And the world? It just watched.